It's official. American exceptionalism is real. They really, truly are upstanding people. Now, we know this because the biggest data leak in history, the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists in Washington, has absolutely blown the lid on global tax avoidance. The Pandora Papers, the biggest data leak ever, almost 12 million documents. They've got Russian oligarchs, they've got Italian mobsters, they've got heads of state from Chile to Uzbekistan to the Ukraine. They've even got King Abdullah of Jordan. They've got Elton John. They've got Shakira. They've identified and outed the usual host of wealthy, powerful celebrities, sports people, tax avoiders globally, except in America. And that must mean that the Americans don't indulge in offshore tax haven-like activity, that they have more integrity than everybody else in the world. Because if you look at the data, there are no politically exposed people. Nobody in Washington or Wall Street has been pinged. They must all pay their tax, they must all do the right things and never have secret accounts in tax havens.
Oh, by the way, I was being sarcastic.
And tellingly, the big four tax advisory and audit firms, PwC, EY, KPMG and Deloitte, are once again omitted. They don't get a Guernsey in the Pandora Papers, just like the last biggest leak ever, which was the Panama Papers, and just like the Paradise Papers. The Americans, the big four, they're just not there. So we can only assume that there is a far higher standard of behaviour going on in America than the rest of the world. Now, if we look at the mechanics of this leak, the last leak by the ICIJ was the Panama Papers. Well, the last big leak was the Panama Papers. The Panama Papers was something like 10 or 11 million documents, but it came from one source. John Doe gave the information to German journalists who gave it to the ICIJ, who then disseminated it to their global media partners. In Australia, that's the Australian Financial Review, owned by Nine Entertainment. It's the Guardian Australia, it's the ABC. And of course, we saw Four Corners on Monday night, breaking the big story. Like the Panama Papers and Paradise Papers before it, the Pandora Papers has nothing of the A-Team, the biggest tax avoidance masterminds in the world. The big four, no US politicians or billionaires of note, nothing from the good people on Wall Street from Goldman Sachs. It's either an incredible coincidence or for some reason they just don't turn up in this data. The ABC has been running this line that if you piled all these documents on top of each other, it would be 4 centre point towers high, 1,200 metres high. In fact, the ICIJ has only released a fraction of the data and only to its chosen media partners. So the actual amount of data that has been released is probably 1% of the total, which gets you to the food court. It gets you to Guzman and Gomez on level 5 of Centre Point Tower, not 4 Centre Point Towers high. And this is the point, that they are hanging on to this data. They are not releasing it to the public. And we know that Julian Assange is still rotting in jail in Belmarsh Prison in London for leaking the data publicly. WikiLeaks put the data out there so that anybody can look at it. And of course, the revelations of US war crimes have made him the subject of extradition proceedings to the US. There's rumours of assassination plots by the CIA and so on. Perhaps the ICIJ didn't want to do this. They didn't want to risk releasing all the data. They're not saying anything. They're refusing to talk to us to explain why they've only just given a fraction of the data. They're not saying whether it's been filtered at all, whether they've had a subpoena from the US Department of Justice to produce this data. I mean, where's it come from? It's come from 14 foreign firms, from Hong Kong to Cyprus to the Seychelles to the notorious British Virgin Islands, from all these tax haven operators, law firms and what they call offshore service providers. Now, what an incredible coincidence that suddenly these 14 firms from around the world would suddenly be hacked, or maybe just suddenly just give the ICIJ the data. This is enormous, and they are spectacular leaks. The journalists who've done the work on them, have done a superb job. Tax authorities around the world are following up. This is all good stuff. But unfortunately, it's only a fraction of the picture. And you just have to ask, why is Delaware not there, the US secrecy jurisdiction? Where are all the US people? It would be truly useful to have this information out there. But instead, once again, the ICIJ has decided to keep this information to themselves and to only allow their chosen media partners to get access to the data, and on what terms we don't really know. The journalists themselves are very good. The ICIJ is largely well-intentioned and very capable, particularly in orchestrating this beautifully choreographed global media launch of the Pandora Papers. We can ask questions, as we've done with the ICIJ. Can we get and see the data? No, you can't. Why not? Because you're not on our media partners list. It's like the Canberra bubble. It's like Scott Morrison with his chosen journalists, the 5 or 10 journalists that he leaks to, that his office leaks to. They give information to them, and they are the messengers in the mainstream media, which deliver, very faithfully I might add, the government's messaging. In this case, it's that rich people and Russian mobsters avoid tax. It's got Tony Blair in there, and it's got a lot of world leaders and so on, but they're all foreign to the US. This is the point. So not to disparage the work of these very capable journalists and the ICIJ, they've done a terrific job, but it's not the full picture. We need to see the full picture. Like this video if you'd like to see the full picture. If you'd like to see journalists chasing the most powerful institutions in the world, not the B-Team. Let's go after the A-Team. Now, we hope to have an update on the legal threats for you soon. We've had 3 or 4 legal threats in the past 3 or 4 months. One is close to a good solution. In the meantime, we really appreciate those people financially supporting us. This is a resource-intensive and it's a costly process to have to deal with all these threats from lawyers while we're just going about, in the public interest, trying to get this stuff out there. So we thank those people who are supporting us. It's a privilege to be working for you.